A medic? We needed a gunfighter, not a glorified Band-Aid dispenser. Keep your head down and try not to get in the way, Doc. The words, slick with condescension, echoed off the corrugated metal walls of the briefing tent. The small crowd of hardened SEALs, a brotherhood forged in salt and fire, chuckled. It was a low, rumbling sound of agreement, the casual cruelty of an exclusive club reinforcing its own prejudices. Sergeant Rex Thorne, a man built like a monument to his own ego, smirked, enjoying the ripple of amusement his pronouncement had caused. He was the point man, the tip of the spear, and in his world, value was measured in decibels and kinetic force. The woman he addressed, Petty Officer Anya Sharma, offered no reaction. Her face, framed by a tight, practical bun of dark hair, remained a mask of placid neutrality. She did not flinch. She did not retort. She did not even meet his gaze. Instead, her hands, steady and sure, performed a final pressure check on the seal of her trauma pack, the practiced movement a small, silent prayer of preparation. But across the room, observing from the shadows near the tactical maps, Master Chief Petty Officer Callahan saw it. He saw the way she stood, not with the weary slump of a support specialist dragged into a world too violent for her, but with the coiled stillness of a predator. He saw the subtle wear on the grip of her rifle, the custom stippling worn smooth by thousands of hours of practiced handling, a detail Thorne's arrogant gaze had completely missed. He saw the ghost of something ancient and formidable in her calm, dark eyes. If you believe that true strength is measured not by the volume of the voice, but by the steadiness of the hand, type competence below. The real briefing was about to begin, and it would not be delivered with words. The air in the tent was thick with the smell of canvas, sweat, and the metallic tang of impending violence. The mission was a high-threat capture or kill, deep in a contested valley where the rules of conventional warfare had long since evaporated. Sergeant Thorne dominated the briefing, his voice a gravelly boom as he stabbed a thick finger at the satellite imagery projected onto the screen. He spoke of violent entry, of overwhelming firepower and shock and awe, a vocabulary that celebrated brute force as the only solution. As he spoke, he repeatedly and deliberately used Sharma as a negative example, a rhetorical prop for his own perceived superiority. And the medic, he'd said with a dismissive wave of his hand, will remain at the rear, at the casualty collection point. Her job is to patch, not to push to him. She was an afterthought, a logistical necessity, a liability in a world of assets. While his voice filled the space, Sharma existed in a bubble of profound silence. She had laid out her equipment on a small canvas tarp with the precision of a watchmaker. Each tourniquet was folded and staged for one-handed deployment. Each chest seal was placed for immediate access. Each vial of morphine was secured, yet ready. It was a ritual of pure, unadulterated professionalism. But next to her medical kit lay her rifle, and 17 Malawian kwaches, and her movements with it were just as intimate, just as practiced. The other operators, caught in Thorne's gravitational pull of arrogance, either ignored her or offered looks of pitying condescension. They saw her compact frame, her quiet demeanor, and the red cross on her pack, and their assumptions wrote a story for them, a story of a non-combatant, a helper, a person to be protected. They failed to see that her silence wasn't weakness, it was discipline. It was the calm of a mind that had no need for validation, a mind that had already walked through the fire and found it merely warm. The insertion was flawless, a testament to the skill of the pilots who danced their helicopters through the jagged teeth of the mountain range under the cloak of a moonless night. But on the ground, the plan disintegrated into chaos in less than 30 seconds. It wasn't an ambush, it was a slaughterhouse. The intelligence was wrong. The enemy wasn't a small, disorganized militia. They were a disciplined, well-equipped cadre waiting for them in a perfectly prepared kill zone. The first RPG struck the lead element, turning Thorne's confident assault into a desperate scramble for cover. Heavy machine gun fire, a monstrous, deafening roar, ripped through the air from a fortified position on the ridgeline, pinning them down in the rocky basin. Men who had seemed invincible moments before were now screaming, their bodies torn by shrapnel and high-velocity rounds. Comms were a frantic mess of panicked shouts and static. Thorne, his face a mask of shock and fury, was bellowing orders that were instantly swallowed by the cacophony of battle. His confidence, so loud and unassailable in the safety of the briefing tent, had shattered into brittle shards of panicked rage. Amid this maelstrom, Sharma moved. She did not run, she flowed. Low to the ground, from one piece of fractured rock to another, she was a study in controlled urgency. Her hands, which had so carefully prepared her kit, were now a blur of life-saving action. She slid next to a wounded operator, her voice a low, calm murmur in his ear as she applied a tourniquet high on his leg, her movements economical and brutally efficient. She wasn't just a medic treating the wounded. She was an operator, assessing the battlefield, tracking the source of the fire, her mind processing the geometry of the fight with a clarity that the chaos could not touch. The machine gun nest was the linchpin of the enemy's defense. It sat high on the ridge, spitting a relentless stream of tracers that stitched fiery lines across the valley floor, making any movement a death sentence. It had suppressed the team's own machine gunner and had Thorn and the remnants of his assault element pinned behind a cluster of inadequate boulders. They were being systematically dismantled. Thorn, in a moment of frustration, had discarded his M210 sniper rifle, deeming it too slow and cumbersome for the close-quarters fight he had anticipated. It lay uselessly in the dust. After stabilizing the third wounded SEAL, securing a pressure dressing to a sucking chest wound with practiced, steady hands, Sharma saw it. It wasn't an opening so much as a flicker, a half-second pause in the gunner's traverse as he reacquired his targets. It was enough. She moved from the wounded man's side, her motion so fluid it was almost imperceptible, and picked up the discarded rifle. There was no hesitation, no second thought. Her hands knew this weapon as intimately as they knew a suture needle. The weight settled into her shoulder as if it were an extension of her own bone and sinew. She didn't bother with the bipod. Using a jagged piece of granite as a rest, she sighted in. The world narrowed to the circular view of the scope. She saw the gunner's face, illuminated by the muzzle flash of his own weapon. Her breathing slowed, one calm cycle, then another. The narrator in her mind was not a medic. It was a mathematician of death, calculating windage, drop, and lead. Her finger tightened on the trigger, a slow, steady press. The rifle's report was a single, sharp crack, distinct from the chaotic symphony of the battle. High on the ridge, the heavy machine gun stopped. It didn't sputter. It didn't slow. It just ceased. A profound, deafening silence rushed in to fill the void, a silence so complete it was more shocking than the noise it had replaced. Every operator, including a stunned and disbelieving Sergeant Thorne, turned to stare, not at the ridge, but at the medic holding the smoking rifle. In the ringing silence that followed the shot, the tide of the battle turned. The remaining enemy fighters, their primary weapon silenced, and their command element clearly in disarray, lost their nerve. The SEALs, freed from the crushing suppression, rallied with brutal efficiency, and the firefight was over in minutes. As the adrenaline began to recede, leaving behind the acrid taste of cordite and the low moans of the wounded, the team began to consolidate. Master Chief Callahan, who had been coordinating the support elements from a command position, moved through the scattered team members, his presence a calming force in the bloody aftermath. He checked on the wounded, his eyes assessing Sharma's handiwork with a professional nod. He saw the expertly applied dressings, the carefully tagged casualties. Then, his gaze fell upon the M210, now leaning neatly against a rock where Sharma had placed it. He walked over, not to Thorne, but directly to her. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't offer praise or express shock. He looked at the rifle, then at her, and saw the single, gleaming brass casing she held loosely in her palm, already policed from the ground. His question was quiet, technical, a query from one master of the craft to another. That was over 700 meters, he stated, his voice flat. Wind was gusting through the notch. What was your hole? Sharma met his gaze for the first time, her own eyes clear and steady. Her reply was just as devoid of emotion, just as technical. No hold, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Dialed 2.2 mils for elevation. Held left edge of the silhouette for a full value crosswind from 9. Fired on the respiratory pause, Callahan simply nodded, a slow, deliberate motion. It was a gesture of profound, unambiguous respect. In that single, quiet exchange. A new truth was established on the battlefield, a truth that had nothing to do with rank or role and everything to do with lethal competence. The debriefing room back at the forward operating base was a tomb of silent tension. The physical wounds from the ambush were being treated at the aid station, but the psychological wounds were on full display. Sergeant Thorne sat slumped in a chair, his usual bravado replaced by a sullen, confused anger. He had already tried to reframe the narrative, muttering to the other men about a one-in-a-million lucky shot and the fog of war. He was trying desperately to rebuild the crumbling edifice of his superiority. Master Chief Callahan entered the room and stood before the main tactical display, his posture radiating an authority that required no volume. He let the silence hang in the air for a long moment, forcing every man in the room to confront the reality of their failure and their salvation. "There seems to be some confusion," Callahan began, his voice as cold and hard as frozen steel. "About what happened last night in the valley." He looked directly at Thorne, whose eyes fell to the floor. "You believe you witnessed a miracle. A lucky shot from an unqualified individual." Callahan tapped a command into the tablet in his hand, and the tactical map on the screen was replaced by a personnel file. The name at the top was Sharma, NY. "Let me correct your assumptions," Callahan said, his voice dropping lower, each word a hammer blow. "Petty Officer Sharma is not a standard medic assigned to this team for support. Her file was sealed at a level most of you don't have the clearance to access." He began to read from the screen, his tone methodical. "Unit of assignment, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Previous postings, Task Force 16, Task Force 121. Primary Military Occupational Specialty, 18D, Special Operations Combat Medic. Secondary MOS, B4, Sniper. Instructor Qualifications, High-Angle Marksmanship, Sears School, Advanced Tactical Medicine. Awards, Silver Star for Actions in Redacted, Bronze Star with Valor Device, Purple Heart." The list went on. The room was utterly still. "Sergeant Thorne," Callahan concluded, his gaze locking onto the humbled man. "Petty Officer Sharma has more confirmed, long-range engagements than your entire fire team combined. She is not a medic who learned how to shoot. She is a Tier 1 operator who is also qualified to rebuild you from the inside out. Your dismissive attitude nearly cost us the lives of 3 men that she personally saved before she saved the rest of you. From this moment forward, you will address her by her proper rank, or as ma'am. Is that understood?" Thorne, pale and visibly shaken, could only manage a choked, "Yes, Master Chief." The lesson had been delivered. The story of what came to be known as the Doc Shot spread through the high desert base like wildfire. It wasn't just gossip. It was a modern military fable, a cautionary tale whispered in chow halls, retold in hushed tones in the barracks, and analyzed in after-action reports. It became a powerful lesson in the danger of assumptions, a stark reminder that in the world of special operations, the most dangerous person in the room is often the quietest. The narrative wasn't about a woman succeeding in a man's world. It was more fundamental than that. It was about a professional excelling in a professional's world, and the comeuppance of an amateur who mistook arrogance for expertise. Sergeant Rex Thorne underwent a profound and visible transformation. The boisterous, condescending NCO was gone, replaced by a quieter, more introspective man. The humiliation had burned away his ego, leaving behind the raw, teachable core of a soldier who wanted to be better. He was seen approaching Sharma not with swagger, but with genuine humility. He asked her to show him the finer points of tactical casualty care. He requested she review his team's marksmanship logs, asking for her input on calculating complex wind calls. His apology never came in the form of a grand, public speech. It was delivered in 1,000 small ways. In the respectful nod he gave her each morning, in the way he now actively sought her opinion during mission planning, and most importantly, in the way he began to treat every single support specialist, from the comms techs to the intelligence analysts, with a newfound respect. He had learned, in the most brutal way imaginable, that the strength of the team was not in its loudest members, but in the combined, often silent, competence of all its parts. The legend of that single, perfectly placed round became enshrined in the team's culture. A few weeks after the mission, the spent 762mm casing, polished to a brilliant shine, was mounted on a rough-hewn plaque of local wood and hung in the team's ready room. There was no grand ceremony, but its presence was a constant, silent sermon. Beneath the casing, a small, engraved brass plate bore a simple, powerful inscription. Assumptions are heavier than AMMO. It became a touchstone, a focal point for new operators joining the unit. The story would be told to them by the veterans, not as a boast, but as a foundational lesson. For her part, Anya Sharma deflected the burgeoning myth with the same quiet grace she displayed in all things. She was uninterested in the legend. She was interested in the lesson. When younger operators, their eyes wide with hero worship, would ask her about the shot, she would deftly pivot the conversation. Instead of recounting the drama of the moment, she would take them to the range and spend an hour teaching them the zen of trigger control. She would talk about the importance of a stable firing position, of managing their breathing, of seeing the world through the scope not as a target, but as a complex physics problem to be solved. She taught them that the perfect shot wasn't a moment of magic. It was the inevitable result of 1,000 hours of imperfect practice. Her legacy, she ensured, would not be a single act of violence, however spectacular. It would be in the quiet competence she instilled in others, in the culture of professionalism she nurtured through her own unwavering example. Her silence continued to speak louder than any war story ever could. A year passed. The faces at the FOB changed, as they always do, with new rotations of operators coming in, fresh and eager. Sergeant Rex Thorne, now a senior instructor for the pre-deployment workup phase, stood before a new group of Green Berets, their faces a mixture of confidence and apprehension. He was a different man from the one who had insulted Sharma in the briefing tent. His voice was still strong, but the arrogant edge was gone, replaced by the quiet authority of hard-won wisdom. During a lesson on team integration, he pointed to a young female medic standing quietly at the back of the formation, her posture methodical and unassuming. "Look at her," Thorne said, his voice commanding the absolute attention of the room. "Right now, some of you are sizing her up. You're making assumptions. You see a medic. You see someone smaller, quieter than the rest. You're probably thinking she's here to patch you up when you get hurt." He paused, letting the words sink in. "That assumption is the most dangerous thing you will bring with you into combat. It's an anchor that will drown you." He then told them the story of Anya Sharma. He didn't spare himself, recounting his own ignorant prejudice, his public humiliation, and the single shot that had saved his life and taught him his most valuable lesson. "You have no idea who is standing next to you," he concluded, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the young soldiers. "You don't know their story. You don't know their skills. So you will judge them by one metric and one metric only, demonstrated competence. You will respect action, not words. You will value precision over volume." Sharma's legacy isn't on a plaque, it's right here. It's this lesson. Don't you ever forget it. The seed of her quiet professionalism had taken root, passed on by the very man who had once tried to crush it. True strength is rarely found in the boastful declaration or the theatrical display of power. It is not the loudest voice in the room, nor the most imposing physique. It is a quieter, more profound force, forged in the crucible of discipline and honed by countless hours of silent, thankless practice. It is the steady hand of the surgeon, the unwavering eye of the marksman, the calm mind of the pilot navigating a storm. Anya Sharma embodied this truth. She was a living testament to the idea that respect is not a right of rank or a privilege of position, but a currency earned through the undeniable evidence of one's actions. Her story became more than just a tale of a single heroic moment. It evolved into a parable about the corrosive nature of prejudice and the triumphant power of quiet competence. It served as a permanent reminder that the most formidable weapon on any battlefield is not the rifle, but the disciplined mind behind it. The legacy she left behind was not written in medals or citations, but was etched into the very culture of the unit, a living principle that continued to guide and inspire long after she was gone. It was a legacy of silence, precision, and a professionalism so absolute that it needed no announcement. It simply was. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud arrogance, and where silent discipline defines true worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.